Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new Wednesday Night Warrior. Oh my gosh, it's been so long. You might be able to hear it still. I'm still a little sick, but I've been sick for like 2.5, 3 weeks, and it's been miserable. And I miss you guys. So I'm back. I'm ready to attack, and I'm ready to start a new year. So I just want to start this video off really quickly with a quick mention about the whole YouTube thing. So right now, as of this video, I'm just going to refresh really quick so that I give accurate numbers. YouTube has changed the way that it does its partnership. So basically, all of the smaller YouTube creators need to get to a certain threshold. So my threshold for views I've already met, but I do need to get to the subscription threshold. So right now I'm at 948 subscribers as of the moment I'm talking. So I only need 52 more subscribers to be able to keep monetization on my videos, things like that. So if you can just hit that sub button, it's really appreciated. I'll be really sorry for like the weird cuts in this video. I'm going to try and keep myself from coughing. I'm going to hydrate myself throughout the video, so we're going to cut a lot of things. But let's get right into it. So Wednesday Night Warrior is a weekly video series. We're going to talk about whatever I want in Magic the Gathering. I do a podcast called Constructive Criticism and Limit Time Only. 2 podcasts by Getting Better at Magic the Gathering. Those podcasts are a huge part of my life. If you haven't listened to them, go check them out. They're both about getting better. We also do Common Knowledge, a show that I produce. That's actually here on puremtgo.com also if you're watching there. So check out Common Knowledge. I produce that as well. But this week on Wednesday Night Warrior, with the recent bannings in Standard, I wanted to talk about how to brew an MTG, or not even how to do it, just how I do it. So there are 2 places where you can start brewing an MTG, I feel like. The first place is in a brand new meta, and the second place is in a defined meta. And I think there's 2 different ways to do this. You can attack a defined meta, or you can go into an open meta. Right now we're in an open meta. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, just because we're not there right now, I just kind of want to move it to the side. But the first thing that you should do when you are brewing a deck is look at the meta. What percentage of decks look like what? What are the cards that people are playing? Things like that. What are the things that you need to answer? On what turns do you need to answer them? And you can typically go to things like mtgstats.com or MTG Goldfish to kind of see what people are playing on, like things like MTGO, for example. Really great resources. You can check them out there. So let's go into open metas and kind of how we can attack an open meta in Magic. So the first thing that I think that a lot of people look at is cards that they're excited about or cards they want to build around. So people get excited about all kinds of cards, whether it's the new Rampant Growth, something that I got excited about, whether it's Winding Constrictor. If you're excited about something, it means that you're going to take the initiative to look at the cards around you and figure out what goes in a deck with this card or that card. And that's exciting. That's something that's fun for everybody and something that we can all get excited about. So the first thing that you want to do is look for those kind of cards, because those are going to give you an opportunity to maybe find something that you can really do. Once you've done that, there are a few things that you can do. I would look at decks in similar color combinations. So, for example, if you're brewing a Green Red Dinos deck right now, there was actually a Green Red Dinos deck that top 16 an SCG opened, or maybe top 32'd. There was a Deck of the Day article by Eric Froelich, things like that, and kind of going through and maybe doing a Google search for Green Red Dino decks that already exist, and seeing if you can piece together the type of things that you like from those decks, as well as the things that you're excited about in your version of the deck. So, there are a lot of Magic players in the world, and it's really funny. I typically find that you do not have like a 100% original idea very often. Typically, if you do a Google search, somebody else has thought of it. And what you can do is you can typically improve upon that idea. And if you have a 100% original idea, awesome. Like, keep it up, jam games, do that thing. But for the most part, I would just look at what other people are doing. Or even in similar decks, right? So, for example, you're trying to build an Hour of Promise deck. Maybe you want to build Hour of Promise Naya or Hour of Promise Bant instead of Jund. But you should go look at the Jund decks and see the type of things that they're playing in their decks to make you understand like how sequencing might look, or how sideboards might look and things like that, right? Even though your deck is going to be probably like 15 cards different, it's important to understand how other decks in the similar spaces work, right? So, for example, if you're building, let's pretend bans didn't happen for a second. If you're building like green red dinosaurs, you might actually go look at some of the sideboard of other type of green red decks, maybe green red pummeler decks, maybe Teamer energy decks, things like that, just to see like what kind of sideboard cards are these playing? What are the main deck cards that these guys are playing? Is there anything that I can adopt into this deck that fits into that space, right? And then one of the huge things that I think that people don't do enough is like they don't look at sideboards. And I'm really guilty of this. Sometimes I'll like build a sideboard and I'll be like, this is sweet. And then I'll go play a league with the deck and I'll be like, I'll play against a card post board and I'll be like, how is that not in my sideboard? Huge problem. Sometimes I forget to put Deathgorge Scavenger in my sideboard. Just a card that should probably be universally in most green sideboards right now. Sometimes I just forget about it. Or maybe you have the incorrect number of duresses effects and there was something else that you could play in that spot. Things like that. The other thing I would say is do quick iterations. So like once you've brewed a deck, that's awesome. Like you've brewed a deck, go jams games with it. But there's a pretty low chance that the deck that you've brewed and created is 100% the best deck in the deck that you should play. So what you should do is once you've jammed those games, figure out like what worked, what didn't work, and make changes. Like there's so many cards in Magic the Gathering, whether it's standard, modern, legacy, vintage, whatever you're doing, there's probably another card that can fit into that spot. And try and figure out like what you want to maximize on the turns you want to maximize. And that's another thing that I think people don't consider enough when they're brewing is like, what does sequencing look like with this deck? And how do I make this sequencing good? One of our listeners was a really big fan of some of my snake decks that I posted last season. They're like, I really like how you care so much about what turns you're doing things. Whether it's quickly, you have so few 2-drops so that you can double spell quickly. That was the whole point of the deck, right? So like you have to understand what are you trying to achieve, right? So for example, ramp decks are a really good example of this. What is your ramp cards telling you? So if you look at something like green red Wolf Run, for example, green red Wolf Run ramp, you went turn 2 ramp spell, and then it ramped you into Solemn Simulacrum, into Primeval Titan, right? It was a 2/4/6. Or you have other ramp decks that go 1 to 3, right? It's a Bird of Paradise into a 3-drop. So maybe you're playing lots of birds and Noble Hierarchs into a 3-drop, like Thalia or something like that, right? So when you're brewing a deck, you have to think about, like, what is this deck trying to do? And that's really important. And then once you've done that, jam games, quickly iterate, right? We're going back to that quickly iterate. Did this work? Why didn't it work? If it did work, what worked well? And what can I change to make it work better? What are the problem cards you're having trouble with? Can I fix this in my main deck? Can I fix this in my sideboard? Do I have too many of certain effects in the deck? Things like that are really important when you're like looking through your deck. There's going to be a certain number of slots for everything that you want, right? It's pretty unlikely that you have 40 creatures, 20 lands, right? You're going to have certain types of effects, and once you do, you should figure out how to maximize those effects and what you want in those spots, right? How many braids do I want versus harness lightning? Maybe I don't want harness lightning. Maybe I want cut ribbons. Why do I want cut ribbons? Am I having trouble with Glorybringer? Am I having trouble with other X4s? Do I care if Glorybringer gets an attack in? Or maybe I need something a little bit more specific. Maybe I need something closer to a murder style effect. So figuring out what those things are and moving forward on what your deck is telling you. So there are a few resources that I use personally, and this is just kind of what I do. So I built all of my decks in Cockatrice. The reason for this is because it's really easy for me to see the deck list and how things break down. There's probably other deck builder things that people use that are great. I just build my decks in Cockatrice, save them, build them in MTGO, and then go play them on MTGO. I'm sure that you could just build them in MTGO, but I used Cockatrice for so long before switching to MTGO that I just see things better that way. So I use Cockatrice. Sometimes if I'm already in MTGO, I'll build them in MTGO. But it really lets you like see your MTGO is actually great because you can see your curve, you can see things like that. Cockatrice breaks things down by card type, things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to build your decks, and I recommend building them in a way where you can visualize and see them, because whether it's MTGO or other resources, being able to see what's going on is really important. I think a lot of people use, is it MTG Goldfish that breaks it down for you also. So things like that are really great where you can see what's going on. And then if you're looking for a certain type of effect, right? So, for example, there's pretty often where I'm like, I need a 2-drop, or I need a 1-drop, or I need a 3-drop, right? And Gatherer Advanced Search is really perfect for this when you're brewing decks. So you like pick a format, right? I'm in Standard, and I need to know all of the red cards that have this mana cost that are this type, so that I can figure out if any of them fit my deck. And yeah, you'll get a lot of trash, right? But I think that you can, once you get good at brewing decks, you can quickly eliminate the trash and move forward and figure out other things that you can do. The other thing, and I've already recommended them, is MTGO Stats, MTG Goldfish, things like that. Just really looking at the metagame, what's going on. Look at people's sideboards, look at people's main deck. What are the people playing? Is there technology that you can adopt and put into your deck? Things like that. It's really helpful, so I really recommend those. And the other thing is, join a bunch of Magic Facebook groups. Like, there's a lot of bad information that goes on in Facebook groups, but there's a lot of good ones too. You can join our group, Constructivism Family. I typically find that people are really open to feedback and really open to giving feedback in that group. But join Facebook groups. Like, if there's an archetype that you like, join that group, right? If you're trying to brew Abzan, join the Abzan group. If you're trying to play Volca, join the Volca group. There's probably a Jund group, I don't know. But there's probably a group for the thing that you're looking for on Facebook, and I find that those are typically more helpful than things like Reddit and places like that, because people have to be open and honest as you can see their face. So that's it for this week. Those are the things that I do. Those are the things that I look for. I hope that gave you some information about how to brew your next deck. Don't forget to check out our sponsor at puremtgo.com. It means the world to me that these guys are there. Shout out to Josh. But with this whole YouTube thing, it's great to know that my sponsors are always there for us. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/ccmtg and patreon.com/ltomtg. If you listen to either of those podcasts, check that out. You can also support me directly at patreon.com/heezygamemedia. That's for the parent company of the podcasts. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure my voice got worse throughout this video. I miss doing Magic content so much. I just had to do this. But thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit those sub and like buttons. Leave a comment. Let me know what your resources are for when you build decks. And we'll see you guys all next week for another Wednesday Night Warrior.